Good day, ladies, NBs, and etceteras, and welcome to Facts and Features, my series in which I share all the best Hitman knowledge I've gained in my 2,400 hours with the world of assassination. I am your hostess, Cassidy Cope, and today I will be presenting around half of all the facts from each prior episode of this series, making this episode the Facts and Features with the most facts I've ever featured. If you're new to this series and find you like this episode, there's another 15 in the series you can watch later, 8 of which are actually good. If you've seen or are now planning to see those, I've done my best to make this episode worth watching alongside the others. All the facts have been rewritten with new jokes and tangents, and many have been updated with new information or related facts that originally appeared in different episodes. Now, with that out of the way, let us begin. The homing briefcase is one of my favorite weapons in the world of assassination, with it retaining the slow motion that all briefcases had on Hitman 2's launch. Its speed is actually tied to your frame rate, with more frames making it lose speed, so as hardware continues to get better at running Hitman, the briefcase will only get slower, worse as a weapon, and more funny. Perhaps, one day, quantum computers will be able to run a Hitman so fast that the briefcase will stop entirely. Or, if you don't want to wait that long, I'm sure renting the processing power of a big data center will get a lot cheaper when the inevitable AI bust happens. In the meantime, try reducing your settings to see just how slow your PC can make it go. The remote EMP charge, unlockable with a level 10 mastery in Mumbai, has many uses. It can destroy cameras,
Good day.
camera recordings, satellites, keycard locks, RFID locks, viruses and vault locks, and open a window. One commenter pointed out that if someone picks it up, they don't disarm it, so NPCs can be used as vectors to carry the EMP to its target. It gets even more useful if you consider its penetration potential. Walls can't stop the EMP's effect, which can be exploited to save yourself a lot of trouble. This can't be done silent assassin, but if you want to get rid of two NPCs next to each other in the coolest way possible, try shooting them once each in the leg, a second time anywhere else, and then punching them unconscious. This was a lot more feasible in Hitman 2 when you only needed a single shot to the leg, but sadly it's since been weakened, despite it leaving unconscious witnesses. If you want to avoid leaving witnesses but still don't care about silent assassin, I recommend trying this. Shoot one person in the leg, garrote the other with a fiber wire, and then garrote the remaining person. And then garrote the remaining person. And then garrote the remaining person. If you want to replicate the special fiber wire animation, I believe it requires pressing the prompt button shortly before it appears, which I tend to do by spamming the melee button while sprinting towards my prey. If you want to do something like this silently, there's a special strategy that calls for the slow motion executive briefcase Mark II. First, throw the homing briefcase at one of them. It travels slowly enough that you have enough time to shoot the second target in the leg and knock them out, but fast enough to incapacitate the first before they can see what's happening. If you do it right and get a little lucky on how your victims ragdoll, you can maintain silent assassin. Since the release of Hitman 2016, IOI has drastically changed its stance on how it should implement diegetic music. It was once the case that even if you pause the game, it would continue playing diegetic music, just at a reduced volume. Hitman 2 also did this, but happened to have added some music to the pause menu, which could cause conflicts. Finally, in a departure from the less consistent policy I reported on almost 3 years ago, Hitman 3 now pauses almost all diegetic music while you're in the pause menu, with the only exceptions I'm aware of being music from items that are classed as sound effects, like the sedative gas mine, and the Seeger 300 Advanced, which plays Ave Maria when you're using its scope. These also have the Hitman 2 problem of overlapping music, but you can stop it by changing your sound effects volume to 0 and then raising it back to its normal value. Now the rifle's music is silenced until you reload the level. 47 has a historically bad relationship with poisons, getting himself injected with a toxic syringe by Diana Burnwood, touched with a toxic glove by Diana Burnwood, and a mouthful of toxic champagne from Lashif, finally giving us an answer to the question we've been asking IOI for years. No, Agent 47 has not seen Casino Royale. It also tells us that he ignores Diana's old target biographies that explicitly told him to not trust anything offered by Lashif. Shame on you, 47. You'd think that with all of this established, poison could be safely considered 47's biggest weakness. topping Diana Burnwood, pop culture references, and Mexican wrestlers. But Hitman is weirdly inconsistent about which poisons affect 47. The blue egg item can damage him if dropped, but not emetic devices. We know 47 isn't just immune to rat poison, because if you flood a room with it, he'll die upon prolonged exposure, suggesting 47 is actually uniquely vulnerable to rat poison, a foe he is incapable of beating in a wrestling match. He's also curiously unaffected by the sedative gas mine, which can be triggered by his presence, but cannot harm him.
Whether 47 can beat a snail in a wrestling match remains to be seen.
No noise can penetrate 2 doors. Explosions and loud gunshot noises have their sound totally muted to anyone outside of the room it was in, or any room connected to that room. Concussive explosives, flashbang objects, and silenced guns, however, only need 1 door to muffle their noise. The Concept 5, an automatic pistol unlockable in Miami, has a special gunshot noise. Except it doesn't. That's how it sounds in Hitman 2, but Hitman 3 changed it to this. Which is a real shame, because I loved the Concept 5's role as an incredibly weird and distinct gun in Hitman 2, a game that really struggled to keep its unlocks distinct amid a million Mark II copies of 2016's items that IOI couldn't even afford to reskin. I will confess that this is the 5th time I've mentioned this in a Facts and Features episode, but I keep doing this because I really want it fixed before Hitman stops getting updates, so I'll likely continue to bring it up. If you don't have a Seeger 300 Ghost to make any car explode in 2 shots, here's a way to do it with the game's better balanced guns. Most cars have a fuel tank in their rear, just below the trunk. If you hit that, it should leak, and shooting the gas pool beneath will make the car explode. I come from a country where it's undesirable to be in public with a large unlicensed firearm, so it's natural to me that the same is true within Hitman, where it gets you spotted much faster and from much further than holding a smaller gun. However, if you hold a small gun while a bigger one is on your back, you're only as suspicious as that smaller gun. The illegal object stored on your back draws 0 attention thanks to the other one that's in your hand. This means that if you're running around with a rifle or sword, the smartest thing you can do is draw your pistol. I wouldn't try to do this in Canada though. I like to poke fun at emetics, but it's not like overpowered items making the game too easy are a recent problem. When New York released for Hitman 2, one of its unlockable items was the electric phone. This could kill whoever answered it with a method that was bizarrely considered an accident kill. It was effectively a skip this target button, which might have not been the worst for some Hitman 2 missions, but halved or eliminated the challenge in others.
Stay safe, sir. Oh shit.
Thankfully, Hitman 3 fixed the electric phone, albeit bluntly. It was removed from the game entirely. Now, some disagree with IOI's decision here, and for those of you who don't care about maintaining the balance of the game's challenge, here's a method to kill any target so quickly that it barely needs thought, requiring no DLC or special unlocks. Give it a try. It's just as fun and fulfilling as the phone was.
Well, how does it work? Does it work?
There's a lot of points where 47 can blend in. Many of these stop working if you get yourself compromised, but some don't, which is great for a good laugh.
Mr. Jason Bolt, please come to the hospital.
Reloading, cover me.
Along similar lines is the interaction to scare Soders to death by informing him he's on the naughty list, which prevents you from taking any damage while you're in the cutscene. Yes, you can do this in the Hokkaido Christmas mission where Soders isn't even your target. If 47 uses the workbench in Romania to get a silenced pistol, it forces him to equip it, even if that means putting a large gun he had in his hands in his... You know what? I'm not gonna guess where he's hiding that shotgun. Oh god. Snipers were illegal to carry on your back while wearing guard disguises in Hitman 2016, but Hitman 2 changed this at the same time it introduced a new way to carry them, in your briefcase. Despite this, there's still some strange exceptions. I get why an informal militia would let a high-ranking soldier use his own choice of weapon, even if a point man should absolutely not be using a sniper rifle. But why are typical security guards in the Icon permitted to wield them?
Command, we might have... Hey, don't wave that around.
Hitman 3 added even more, likely intentional, inconsistencies with its maps. Sniper rifles can be legally, openly carried by 47 if he's dressed as an elite guard from Dubai, a biker in Berlin, an Ambrose Island pirate or militia member, Agent Green, but not Agent Montgomery, and Cortazar, the leader of Don Yates' mercenaries, none of whom are allowed to use snipers themselves, not even the designated snipers. Propane is very useful for placing your target's path. Propane is very useful for placing your target's path, so you can shoot it for an accident explosion kill. Really? So you can shoot it for an accident explosion kill. But have you considered that you can also just throw the propane right in front of them and detonate it with a firework? The big one can be unlocked by playing Sapienza, and it creates sparks without bringing any suspicion your way when you use it, making this not just easier and faster, but also safer than simply shooting the canister. Even easier is bringing a tranquilizer gun, shooting your target with it, and then immediately shooting them in the head, which somehow doesn't break Silent Assassin if you do it fast enough. NPCs do not respect trespassing boundaries, nor lock doors, which is why we'll never get a proper prison level, no matter how much people beg.
Oh, Mr. Reaper, I see you don't have your key? Now, you need to go to the Welcome Center and pick it up.
At the very least, this can be exploited if you make the NPC open a door for you, such as by using a coin trail or phone to lead an NPC close enough that they must open the door. If you like to use a little more force when making NPCs open doors for you, you can add a little spice to suit-only runs of Hokkaido to use NPC bodies to open doors.
A weapon.
How secure can RFID security seriously be if it's agnostic towards the user's consciousness?
The Sanguine fashion show in Paris takes place outside. While most of the level revolves around the interior of the palace, those parts are revolving around a massive courtyard in the center. The show's moody lighting is achieved by blocking the sun with a tarp, which is secured in this tent-like shape. I've recently learned this is actually quite similar to the current temporary chamber of the Canadian House of Commons. This courtyard in the West Block of Parliament had a giant glass roof erected over it to shelter the room below, which has been where the House of Commons has convened since renovations started of its traditional home in the center block. I asked the government for permission to use their much better images here. Canada's weird for not having government photos be in the public domain, but my request was denied due to an objection to Hitman's gun violence.
So now I get to use images from visiting official photographers whose governments do allow their works to be used freely. Good evening, men, specifically cisgender men, and nobody else. I guess, if you really want to, you can watch this episode of Frauds and Falsehoods, my series in which I keep to myself all of the trade secrets I've obtained in my 2 hours with the world of assassination across Stadia, iOS, MetaQuest 3, and the Nintendo Switch. The first one. I am your wife, Cassidy Cope, and today I'll be presenting exactly one lie, making this episode, the Frauds and Falsehoods, with the most falsehoods I've ever defrauded. The Concept 5, a clip-fed revolver unlockable in Miami, has a generic gunshot noise. That's how it's always sounded. The Concept 5 was one of many useful unlocks I adored that were added by Hitman 2, though I think I prefer that game's other gems, like the Seeker Emetic Dart Gun and Electric Phone, the latter of which I have never stopped believing needs to make a comeback. This is the first time I've mentioned this in a Frauds and Falsehoods episode, and I won't ever mention it again, because it should stay exactly the way it is. If you find yourself to be reliant on lockpicks, you'll find this fact to be very useful. It's possible to shoot faster than intended using a common tech called pause buffering, which, in this context, means pausing in between each shot you fire to shoot faster. This isn't useless for getting yourself out of a jam in combat, but where it really shines is opening doors with what's called a mud shot. If you just repeatedly shoot at a door while pausing in between your shots, you can open almost any door with any gun, finally completing the apotheosis of the ICA-19. If timing your pause buffering is too awkward for you, I'd advise trying out the ICA-19 FA Stealth, unlockable in Colorado, and the DAC X2 Covert, unlockable in Mumbai. Both of these are fully automatic, and therefore capable of opening doors without mudshots, while still remaining relatively quiet and demanding only your pistol slot when you enter the level. If you don't have a melee weapon to silently knock someone out, remember that subduing them can be quite noisy.
Shit!
This is even more true if you want to kill them without a melee weapon. Pistol eliminations are just as loud as the gun you're using them with,
Oh, God, help!
and snapping someone's neck is significantly louder than subduing them. To minimize noise, I recommend first knocking them out using whatever means are available to you, and then using the snap neck button on their unconscious body, which is completely silent. Allowing yourself to be just a little seen trespassing can have its benefits. Skilled players may deliberately allow themselves to be mostly, but not entirely, seen while trespassing, luring the witness NPC to where they could have sworn they saw something. Of course, this can, and is meant to, be triggered accidentally by a player in need of punishment for their risky behavior, but if you simply drop an item while in an NPC's line of sight, they'll completely forget about any other distractions. Speaking of agility actions, you've probably noticed that the game stops 47 from carrying his briefcase or any large items in his hands when he climbs onto any ledges or pipes, because the airline charges extra to be able to pack more. And I suppose, within that metaphor I set up, the way you can fly first class is by climbing out a window. In the game, not in a plane. Please refrain from climbing out of plane windows. Anyway, climbing through a window lets you keep the large item in your hands. It might disappear for a moment, but it'll reappear once 47's on land. Use caution when deciding when you'll land though, because if you're going to transfer to a different plane, you might find yourself stranded at an airport with no comfortable options out. The game has a number of concussive explosives that are next to useless, because they have a smaller range and fun factor than normal explosives. They make a loud noise that brings everyone to the people you just knocked out. They don't count as accident knockouts, so the guys you just lured can spot the bodies you just made. And they can't even take out two people facing each other without one of them seeing the other's body in the instant between when the first and second victims are knocked out.
You gotta be kidding me.
In a just world, I'd be telling you about a novel, if niche, use for these explosives. But as we'll discuss many times today, there is no justice in the way Hitman's items are balanced. So I'm instead here to inform you that there's a nearly objectively better option. If you bring a breaching charge inside a briefcase and set it next to a fire extinguisher, you'll have an improvised weapon that can knock out people in accidents, meaning their bodies won't ruin your silent assassin if found. The only downside to this is that fire extinguishers are as loud as a gunshot, whereas concussive explosives are quiet enough to contain their chaos to one room. If you pay attention while on instinct, you'll notice that guards are highlighted with brighter outlines than their civilian counterparts. This can be useful for spotting the hidden guards around Whittleton Creek, or confirming the identity of assassins in Freelancer. All of the following surfaces will bleed in response to being shot. The hazmat suits in Italy, though not the ones in Patient Zero. The Scarecrow disguise. Janus's funeral robes in the Isle of Scale, but not his Ark Society robes in Wilton Creek. The Plague Doctor disguise. And last but definitely not least, some toilet paper. Janus's house in Wilton Creek has multiple enormous cacti. These were normal size in Hitman 2, but were later blown up by Hitman 3. I thought this might have been patched when IOI mentioned a cactus-related bug in Wilton being fixed by the Bruce Lee update, but Janus's second biology experiment gone horribly wrong remains in the game as of the latest patch. It seems the old man has some interest in propagating them, because as of a bitter pill, Galen Voles is harboring some specimens in his house. When I first covered this in Facts and Features episode 13, I hypothesized that this change in size was caused by Hitman 3's reuse of the cactus asset in Mendoza, where it's about the same size as it now is in Whittleton, but in much more appropriate environments. I can confidently say that this is wrong, as I've since located the asset in Colorado, where it's a completely normal size. so how Janus's cacti got so big is officially beyond me. The Bartholomew Hornswoggle escalation in Haven Island asks you to kill a target with a cannon. To ensure you can't fuck this up, the devs gave you access to unlimited quantities of cannonballs and gunpowder, allowing you to collect as much of each as you like. Unless the game crashes. If you ever need to smuggle an illegal object beyond a frisking checkpoint, here's a really easy way to do it. Checkpoint guards are incapable of seeing almost anything other than you. So if you simply place a briefcase on the ground in front of 47 and then invite a frisk, they'll disregard it and allow you to pick it back up, with its illegal contents ignored. Exercise a little caution though. People outside of the checkpoint might take some interest in your smuggled goods while you're unable to defend them.
Thank you, sir.
A little fun fact, you used to be able to get out of a situation like that. Hitman 2 allowed you to initiate combat during a frisk, but this was removed with the release of Hitman 3. My current theory for why IOI would remove this is that there's no other way to back out of a frisk, meaning the only prompt on the screen is to start a fight, which could be interpreted as a QuickTime event by newer players less familiar with Hitman. Strangely, we lost the only way to escape a frisk long after the release of Hitman 2, which took away our ability to accept frisks while carrying legal items.
Hey, you can't take this in here.
If you want to deliberately fuck up a frisk, you better own Hitman 2016 or buy a used copy. Berlin's original start location, that is, the gas station where you start the first time you play the mission, not to be confused with the frisk point that's the default start on subsequent playthroughs, is very interesting, in that if you use it and complete your objective, it obstructs your ability to use any of the level's normal exits. The only way to leave is by walking through this gap in the fence. There's no prompt to exfiltrate or anything. You just go through and the level's done. If you kill your 5th ICA agent while on the other side of the fence, this can have some funny consequences.
Agent Tams, report, are you there?
Some guards in the game exhibit telepathic abilities. For example, if you silently kill Tamara Vidal and the Kinema on her way to your confrontation, NPCs in the area become aware that something's off. The Hawke's Bay hive mind is another notable example. Everyone in the vicinity of the house will be alerted if even one person spots you for a moment. The closest the world of assassination ever comes to committing the cardinal stealth game sin of making everyone know exactly where you are when one person sees you right before dying. And my final example for today, Agent Montgomery in Berlin, gets so angry if you call for a meeting with him and stand him up that he channels his powers to locate and pursue you, no matter where you are.
That's right. Hold on, waiter.
On the other hand, some guards can have no clue what's going on. A good number of bodyguards will, if their VIP has disappeared under their nose, roam around the map to search for them. If you haven't hidden the target's body, this introduces another variable that can find it. But if you've covered your tracks, then it's just funny.
Mr. Novikov? Mr. Novikov?
Amazing!
If a target sees a body, or 47 committing a crime, it's not too late to save your silent assassin rating.
Get the hell out of here! Get out!
As long as you do it before they report what they saw to a guard, killing the target is a very effective way to make them forget everything, restoring your silent assassin rank. I cannot recommend using this enough. If you have no items equipped, try holding the aim button to focus on any conversations you don't want to miss. This boosts the relative volume of the dialogue so you can hear it even in loud environments.
We should call the security.
Well, I don't know. I really don't want to get involved. I've got a lot of unpaid traffic tickets now.
Mendoza has a strange number of suits that give an advantage over others. Both versions of the wetsuit allow you to exfiltrate via the tunnel beneath Don's villa. The Requiem suit lets you finish the mission by praying at the shrine behind the villa, and the Midnight Black suit gives 47 permission to wander around the villa's grounds.
Excuse you, sir.
He's not allowed inside the building itself, and will have to submit to frisks to use certain entrances, but it's still a ridiculous step above what other suits provide, especially if you're doing suit-only challenges.
We're good. Keep moving, keep moving.
For an idea of how rare these unique suit traits are outside of Mendoza, one of the examples notable enough to make it into this video is the Corky the Clown outfit, which is the only suit that can legally carry its associated melee weapon, a new bat. The only bat that's legal to hold in any suit. My other example is the White Ninja suit, which is considered identical to the proper ninja disguise for receiving special dialogue.
A real ninja wouldn't be seen by anyone. I'd be dead already, shot by a poisonous arrow or have my throat slit. Yeah, you're a fraud.
Good evening,
like a
ladies
department
and
store
gentlemen.
Santa Claus.
Welcome to the
Now,
annual gathering
piss
of the
off.
Arc Society.
Climbing onto this roof in Hokkaido, and also making everywhere a hostile area in Hokkaido.
Hey, you're under arrest. Stand still. Put the hands up.
If 47 dons the knight armor that's on display in the Isle of Scale, he'll actually become resistant to damage. Both bullets from guards who want to verify that chivalry is dead, and 47's own explosives. Everyone knows that you can eliminate NPCs by pressing the melee button behind them while holding a gun. And if you didn't know that, then I expect to thank you for saving your Silent Assassin run, because everyone else had to learn the hard way. Anyway, pistol eliminations are a little broken if the gun you're using is fully automatic. The game can't decide if it should be using one bullet or the traditional two, if there is or isn't a hit marker, or if one bullet sounds like it's going right through the target NPC. Actually, roll that one back. Is that what the hit marker's from? Can you hit an NPC with a pistol eliminations bullet? I don't think so. If you shoot a surface nearby to an NPC, they'll investigate the impact, just as if you'd thrown something there. Watch out though, using this on the same NPC twice or shooting too close to them can cause trouble. You can do something similar with gunshots from silenced pistols. NPCs can hear silenced shots if they're loud enough, and will attempt to investigate the source. Likewise, this is also limited by the distance from and frequency with which you shoot, unless your gun is empty, in which case you can distract NPCs over and over again without ever causing them to panic.
What?
Panic isn't undesirable in all circumstances though. Panicking a civilian NPC will make them unable to notice you trespassing. They'll only see you if they're natural enforcers of your disguise, or if you're holding an illegal item. I'm sure you already know that silenced guns are quiet, but did you know they're even quiet when guards use them? This makes Dubai considerably easier if you decide to play loud, because it's possible neither you nor the guards you're fighting will actually be using loud guns, keeping combat more reasonable to contain. If you place a coin, which can be done by holding both bumpers or the caps lock button, NPCs act like it just appeared out of nowhere, and will attempt to pick it up.
Touching.
You can even place multiple coins in a trail to make an NPC go wherever you wish.
Yes.
All of this works with other distraction objects as well, like phones.
Yeah, I'm awesome.
Speaking of phones, they're some of the best distraction objects in the game.
If you could take a couple of steps back, it would set my mind at rest.
Obviously, they can work just like a coin, but their noise when you trigger them is louder than even the proper audio devices you can unlock. And if you have the flash phone, you can of course detonate it to distract and panic everyone in the room.
Good day, NBs, MCs, and MDs, and welcome to Facts and Features, a series in which I share all the best Hitman knowledge I've gained in my 650 hours with the world of assassination. A paltry amount of time that hardly makes me worth the scum on the bottom of Cassidy Cope's stylish and trendy boot. I am your host, Leo Vader, and today I will be presenting 1 to 2 facts and 0 features, adding nearly nothing to the episode overall. The Concept 5 is an unlockable automatic pistol from Hitman 2's Miami map, where it's used by the combat android Palace to impress target Robert Knox's potential military clientele. But it may in fact lead to more of a military client L.
Damn.
It sounds like no other gun in the game. But the bad news, if you're sitting down, is that in Hitman 3, it doesn't sound like that anymore. It sounds like this. The Concept 5's once one-of-a-kind sound has been replaced with a cookie-cutter swap-in that could go with any other automatic weapon. It's just plain wrong. Who are we as a nation that we could allow something like this? Crystal clear footage, right before our eyes, and the developers remain silent. It is an absolute imperative we vote them out this November at the Game Awards. It brings me no shame to say this is the 8th time we've mentioned this in a Facts and Features episode, and we will continue mentioning it until our demands are met. Viva la resistance! My aunts haven't been helping with this one bit.
You can trigger many distraction items, like sinks, generators, and fuse boxes, by simply shooting them. Hilariously, NPCs are actually able to just fix most objects you damage in this way.
Let there be light.
It can even do so with a little help from their friends, if your shot happened to separately lure someone else. There are some limits to this though. If you shoot an object 3 or more times, it just stops working entirely, and can't be used again.
This looks 100% broke.
Of course, this is just one of countless uses for the basic silenced pistol, the single most versatile tool in any assassin's arsenal. If you think you need a screwdriver, no you don't, you need a gun. If you think you need a wrench, no you don't, you need a gun. If you think you need that really important item that you can't progress without, no you don't, you need a gun.
Will this maxim, get it, serve you well 100% of the time? No, it'll only serve you as well as a gun can. So you'll be served well about 90% of the time.
I guess what I'm saying is that before you replan or go running to fetch that critical item needed for your plan, drop a save and see if your ICA Swiss Army knife can do the trick. What you learn might just save you some item slots in future runs. If you've ever wondered what the rationale is for each level's suggested loadout, it's just all the items you brought with you the last time you played and the level's default starting location, provided you've unlocked it. This system is actually a relatively recent addition to the world of assassination. Back in Hitman 2, you could set your own consistent default loadouts for each map, which was very helpful for reminding me that I should probably bring disposable scramblers to Hokkaido. The cars 47 can drive to exfiltrate let him take some additional lives with him on his way out. If he decides to bring extra murder for the road, the ICA does not hold it against him in his performance evaluation. Please preserve any Hitman 3 save files you have from before September 25th, 2025. I've found that some of these saves are affected by a hilarious bug that makes it impossible for your guns to run out of ammo. If you start subduing someone, you can just stop. They can't ever break the chokehold that 47's put them in, but after a little while, they do comment on how bad you are at hitting men.
I have to be honest, this is getting somewhat uncomfortable.
Here's one of my favorite ways to get some cheap laughs. Try making 47 die as he's doing an agility action. The Mark II weapons are useless, cry the unbelievers. Why am I being given so many guns I already have with pink stickers? Ask those who doubt the plan. Little do they know that many Mark II weapons have slightly different sounds from their original versions. I bet you didn't consider that, did you? The ICA-19 you get at the start of the game is pretty quiet, but other guns are quieter. The Krugermeyer 22 makes sense, as that gun's entire role is to be the quietest pistol, but naturally, the game's dart guns will be similarly silent. What makes less sense is the Seeger 300 Ghost, which is quieter than the Silverballer because having the highest base damage of any firearm in the game and more slow time mana than any other rifle just didn't make it powerful enough, I guess. If you shoot a large weapon that you can't put on your back before picking it up, it'll retain the damage from the bullet's impacts. This even includes needles from dart guns, if you want to keep everyone up to date on their vaccinations. Many starting locations have a picture of 47 attached, depicting him in the disguise tied to that start, if there is one. For levels from Hitman's 1 and 2, these pictures feature 47 as he appeared when the level first released, because his face has changed so much over the years that it's not worth paying someone to update the images each time. The exception to this is the kitchen start in the Isle of Scale, the associated picture for which has 47 as he would appear in Hitman 3, years after Scale's debut. I recently found out this was added in a patch for Hitman 3. IOI changed the old image because it showed 47 dressed as the head chef, and therefore didn't resemble the disguise he actually wears when starting here. There's a good number of assets in Hitman that are reused across levels. For example, after the death of Silvio Caruso, his estate must have auctioned off everything that wasn't nailed down, and at least one object that was. This statue made its debut in Sapienza, but it appears again in Whittleton Creek, where it's featured quite prominently in the Wilsons' backyard. There's a similar reuse behind some of the game's music. Ken Lynch 2, IOI's last non-Hitman project, at least for the next today, took place in China, which is, geographically, close to Japan. As such, Hokkaido makes very liberal use of Ken Lynch's music. If you'd like, you can actually bring that music with you by listening to the Mixtape 47 item from Bangkok, which it sounds like 47's been doing too often. Some NPCs with particularly important disguises will remove themselves from your path after being subdued and woken back up.
Do we have a description of who we're looking for?
I'm sorry, I just can't recall. It went kinda fast.
For example, if a player knocks him out to take his disguise, the painter in Mumbai can't be allowed to interrupt the painting mission story, so he'll just make his way downstairs and do this.
Jay, it's me, Soham. Listen, this day has been a complete nightmare. Yes, this is important. I don't care about your stupid card game. Suno, Hana, just listen. I'm at Rangan's place. All of a sudden, everything goes dark. Next thing I know, I wake up with a massive headache. No, I did not get drunk. Look, can you come and get me? I'm your brother. Come and get me. Acha, good. I'll be here.
I'm sure we've all gotten ourselves spotted in a way that felt like it was some real nonsense. But before we accuse the game of being a broken mess that's conspiring against us, and I'm sure that's the case for you, but my other audience members need to know this, remember that NPCs can see 47 commit crimes through mirrors, a feature added by Hitman 2. Wait one goddamn minute. There is no way you should have seen me through that mirror from that angle. There's some serious nonsense going on here. This game is clearly a broken mess that's conspiring against me. Outside of some very specific circumstances, NPCs generally don't take fall damage, which can be strategically used to add some levity to Death in the Family. Normally, when you accuse Alexa of being responsible for a brother's suicide, she ends her life by jumping off her balcony. However, because fall damage is very complicated in this game, it cheats by using scripting magic to kill her, which you can interrupt with some cleverly timed music. Now she's safe and alive, standing here emotionlessly while her guard realizes he screwed up. Okay, what if I use a muffin? Wow, the game may call these muffins blueberry, but I think we just saw a fruit explosion. There's a lot of ways to unintentionally get 47 killed in the least insurable workplace accident in history, like standing in a puddle while tampering with a cable connected to mains electricity, or running Windows 11. But my personal favorite way to increase the ICA's insurance premiums is to sabotage the clock Athena Savalas leans on and watch the action from below.
Sorry, sir, got orders.
I'm sorry, but you should have used a safety net. Your claim is denied.
Two people who want to get this over with and go home and have a hamburger, right?
Whoa, they're kicking the shit out of each other.
If you never let 47 leave a defensive position, it's possible to make him get into a hand-to-hand fight that lasts forever. If you do this in a fight you initiated with a fake surrender, any nearby guards will refuse to shoot, as they continue to act as if you're still surrendering. While getting your bearings of your surroundings, keep a lookout for the game's many materials that can be shot straight through, like the paper walls and doors in Hokkaido. This fuse box in the Isle of Scale turns off this camera. Sort of. The camera maintains the white dot indicating it can spot you, even though it can't. This is very strange because there's only one other camera I know of that's tied to a fuse box. This one in New York. Except this doesn't have the same white dot behavior as the one in Scale. My first guess was that these were made by one developer, iterating on this cool idea as a pet project. But it's not very likely. New York was developed internally by IO themselves, while Scale was mostly outsourced to contractor Sumo Digital, the company behind Three-Headed Serpent, Freedom Fighters, the level, and Landslide.
That's Marcus' status.
Muffins are actually one of my favorite items in Hitman. If you throw one at a target from where nobody can see you, they'll go into some form of lockdown, with nearby guards trying to protect them from the threat. I described these as advanced muffin strats to a friend, before immediately remembering that the speedrunning community has produced much more advanced muffin strats, so I guess these are mediocre muffin strats. Good evening, ladies, envies, and etceteras, and welcome to Channel Cope News. Coming up tonight, death by proxy. With the ICA files in hand, we now know how former Yardbird Alexander Kovac killed his former colleagues. As he's already in prison for the crime, we interviewed him to get some insight into the process of hiring the agency. Facts and features. As the death investigation finally concludes, we took the chance to speak freely with actor Charisma Hassan about the death of Dawood Rangan, Bollywood icon and victim of the 1% killings, on the set of the doomed film Mumbai Hero. But first, turning the tables. The Palace Purchase scandal continues to rock the historically popular Kronstadt Industries, with Parliament in debate, or worse, consensus, on empowering a deep inquiry into the matter. We confronted Kronstadt spokeswoman Korpa Capital's daughter earlier today.
There are no problems with Palace, Concept 5, nor our influence. The degradation of the press and all that exists is a non-issue.
In this newsreader's humble opinion, that sounds like nothing more than a load of noise. I believe our previous coverage has adequately shown that these quality issues pose a serious threat to our state's ability to kill people. If you'd like to support our ongoing investigation, please support Channel Cope with a like, subscribe, hype, channel membership, Blue Sky follow, subscription to the second channel, registration to vote in your jurisdiction's elections, participation in your jurisdiction's elections, purchase of the products that sponsor this broadcast, Twitter follow, evidence of your affairs sent via fax machine, evidence of your partner's affairs sent via Canada Post, evidence of your dog's affairs sent via his carrier pigeon wife, and revolution against the tyrannical ruling class. I've been Cassidy Cope for Channel Cope News. Have a nice day after these messages.